in society, sometimes we see persons using sex and gender interchangeably or not perhaps in the real purpose. For example, I think of gender reveal parties when, a happy couple is, say, revealing the ultrasound results, saying if they're going to have a boy or a girl, little baby, and then there's a gender reveal. We don't call them sex reveals. Should we be calling them sex reveal parties?
It's technically a sex reveal party, yes, because a child is not able, a newborn child or an unborn child cannot tell you their gender yet. But I understand why parents are probably a little bit reluctant to use the word sex, even though it's a clinical term and we're referring to something that's biologically accurate. But I do understand why there may be some discomfort there in referring to a child's sex, because sex obviously also connotes sex in terms of the activity or human sexuality, and that's not something we really want to put together with in reference to a child.
Okay, so then just to recap one more time. So sex is biologically fixed, gender is not, or how would you phrase that?
So biological sex is determined by gametes, which are mature reproductive cells. So you have eggs and sperm. And then gender, for the vast majority of us, our gender is the same as our biological sex. So someone who's born female identifies as female. For transgender people, they identify as the opposite sex. So their gender identity is the opposite. So someone may be born male but identify as female, or vice versa, be born female and identify as male. Although the term transgender now is expanding to also encompass people who identify as a third gender. So this is something that's a gender that is not male or female, or is a combination of both. So a common way to describe someone like that, they will identify, say, non-binary or gender fluid or gender neutral. I've always said people can identify however they want. I'll use the pronouns that they want someone to use, but I maintain that science backs the idea that there are two genders. There are only two.
Okay, so based on your scientific research, there are only two genders.
Yeah, which is considered controversial nowadays. I don't think it should be.
I was, my eyebrow, I've heard you say that before, but I was also visibly raising my eyebrows because, as I mentioned in my intro, I know, the 7 genders has been sort of considered norm for quite some time, and we're upwards of 100 and counting. So that's why it's important to hear what the science has to say, and hence why I put the question to you.
Of course. Yeah. I really appreciate you having me on to talk about this because it's so important. I don't think we have to misrepresent what science says to advocate for equal rights for people who identify or feel differently. And in fact, I think actually misrepresenting the science hurts activism or hurts these communities. Number one, I would say people in the community, so trans people, intersex people, people with gender dysphoria, the activists don't speak for most people in those communities. And then when they do go so far and extreme with their political activism, it reflects poorly on everyday trans people who just want to live their lives and who are saying, please don't say that we're asking for these things, because we are not. I'm not transgender, so I don't want to say that I speak for the community, but I do definitely support, transitioning adults. I do support legal protections for trans people. I just think there needs to be some nuance here. And I don't think, again, that we should have to hide what the science says or intimidate scientists in order to facilitate that.
So have you been intimidated in the past?
I think I would say people have tried to intimidate me for sure. And I would say since the book has come out, I deal with a lot of it. It's been surprising to me because I thought they had their run already, but they keep going, they keep trying. I think it's my personality. I'm just not willing to be quiet about it. I feel too strongly about this. And because I work as a journalist, I do have more freedom to speak to the science, which is actually quite terrifying. So my colleagues in academia, or my colleagues who are scientists who have an affiliation with, say, medical or scientific organizations, they can't actually speak honestly about these topics because they run the risk of losing their jobs or being basically left to their own devices if the mob goes after them on social media. So it's a really, really scary time because science should be allowed to stand on its own. Scientists should be able to do their jobs without interference. Clinicians who work with people with gender dysphoria should be able to do their jobs and not have to worry about activists going after and trying to ruin them. But this is unfortunately the climate we are in right now.